everyone, and welcome to Where's God podcast. In this podcast, we try to find God in movies, books, songs, and places where He's not obviously found. In today's podcast, we're talking about Where's God in Remember the Titans. And I have a very special guest with me, my mother. Hello, Mom.
Hello.
Great to have you with us. So, before we even start, Mom, I gotta ask you, what kind of power do you have?
Soul power.
And how strong are you?
Too strong.
Okay, that's what I like to hear. If you're a fan of the movie, you know those are lines from the movie. They say, what kind of power you got? You know I got soul power. All right, so this is in my top 5 favorite movies. I love this movie. What about you, Mom?
I love it too. And it's one of my mother's favorite movies that she had. She would watch it over and over again.
Yeah, I remember one time she was coming into the house and she was doing the same moves that the players were doing. I feel good. I feel good. And then one time when my cousin, I think he lost a game when he was little, soccer, baseball, and he was feeling pretty sad. And she just said to him through the fence, na, 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 na. Hey, hey, hey. So yeah, it is a family favorite. We actually just watched it. So we're fresh and ready for this podcast and excited to talk about it and find God in it. So my first question, Mom, is what does this movie teach us about God needing all His children for His work?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main themes of the movie, that the team could not be as successful as it was if everyone didn't come together and do their part. So, just like the team needed everyone's individual talents and everyone's individual effort, they need a lot of effort. Your family or your community, your church congregation, or, if you're a young person and you're on a team, a sports team, everyone has to participate, from the young to the old. In Corinthians, Paul talks about the body of Christ, how every part is needed to make it whole. This movie portrays so clearly that we need everyone to make something special happen.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the players on the team, but it's, they're different parts within the movie. But if you're thinking about just a football team, you've got the highly esteemed players that are the well-known ones, the quarterbacks or the running backs. But then you also have the blockers.
Yeah,
who
the
else?
Front line, the offensive line, the defensive line, all the unsung heroes.
Yeah, and what would happen if that front line wasn't there?
Yeah, the quarterback would get sacked every time, and you wouldn't score any points.
Right. So, yeah, you lose every game, right? So like you were saying, every person, every player is important. In the career-wise, you've got maybe the head of the company and the director, the secretary, the custodian. The custodian might look at the director and think, my job is nothing compared to him.
Yeah, but just think, if the custodian wasn't there, I used to be one, the place would be a mess. There'd be, trash everywhere, or in the cafeteria there'd be food everywhere, and bathrooms. Don't even talk about that.
Yeah, people physically wouldn't be able to get their work done, those secretaries or the director, the managers, and they probably mentally wouldn't be able to either because it was such a mess, Every job's important, and do you think it's important for us to think that way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, doesn't that just make you feel good thinking about it, that every job is important? Because a lot of times, we are judging ourselves or others, on, maybe the person taking your order at McDonald's or something. You don't think they're as important, but everyone is. Everyone is important. Every job is.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to think that way, because then we feel more fulfilled when we're putting in the most effort. If we don't think our job is that important, we're not going to put that much effort in. We're not going to feel very fulfilled. But what if, one day a position opens up and we have done our best, then we could be called to that position, and what if we haven't done our best, we're not even going to be looked at. So kind of like in the movie, Petey was on the offensive side, but then he got switched to the defense and he ended up thriving and doing really well there. And I think it was important for him to like grow in that way. Yeah. And then there's also Sunshine, who they took him on the team, even though they already had a quarterback. So he was sitting on the bench the whole time, but he was still practicing. He was still part of that team. And then when Rev, the quarterback, broke his wrist, what happened?
Yeah, he was the starter, and he blossomed. He really did. He was the perfect person to take his spot because he worked so hard, and, well, he had natural talent too.
Yeah, because he was practicing, he was preparing. So what does that mean for us, like, as far as in our work for God?
So if we're doing the things that Heavenly Father wants us to do, like keeping His commandments and trying to stay close to Him by thinking of Him often, I think that He'll, be right there for us whenever we need Him. And this life is rough, so we do need Him all the time.
Yeah, I love that. So we were talking about God needing all of His children. What does this movie show us about God's love for all His children? So this movie, if you're not familiar, it's set during the civil rights movement. I think it's in like the 60s, right? And it's set in Virginia, and this particular school where the boys are at is the first school to desegregate. So there's a lot of division, there's a lot of hate, protests, there's a lot of violence, and there's still, even though they're moving in the right direction, Black people still do not have many rights. They're still obviously very looked down on, a lot of prejudice. So what does this movie show us about God's love for all His children?
Well, just like the coach in the movie, God sees our potential, and we're all sons and daughters of Him. Everyone in the whole world is His son or daughter, and so He's no respecter of persons. He encourages all to come unto Him, no matter our background or present state, good or not good.
Yeah, and like you were saying, just like the coach, the coach was hard on everybody. Yeah. He was hard on the white players. He was hard on the Black players because he saw all their potential, and even when the bigger boy, his dad's in the Navy, and he's like, when I hear football, I come running. That's what I think about pickleball, by the way. But he loves everybody, and he's just like a easygoing guy, but he doesn't see himself going to college. And the coach says, let me go over your tests with you every week. And he ends up, it says in the credits that he's a well-to-do businessman.
Yeah, and he went to college for 4 years and played football.
Yeah, he didn't see himself going to college. He didn't see himself playing football in college. But because the coach took extra time, saw his potential, worked with him, he was able to achieve that. So I think God sees us way more than we see ourselves.
Yeah.
He sees our potential.
And His arm is always stretched out. I mean, He always, whether He puts people in our path or gives us an idea, He's always helping us reach our full potential.
Yeah. What do you think God's desire for us is in the context of the movie?
I know one of the main themes is for us to be one, to be united with each other. In the movie, the coach tried many approaches to get them over their prejudice and preconceived notions about each other.
Yeah, like when they're about to go to camp, he notices that all the white kids are in one bus, all the Black kids are in the other. So he's like, everybody get down here, Okay, all the offensive players on this side, all the defensive players on this side, you're sitting with him, you're sitting with him. Oh, and by the way, you're going to be rooming with this person too. So he does that strategy. He has them room with someone of a different race. He also has them get to know each other, ask questions about each other, learn about each other.
Yeah, and those pretty much fail. Even like having consequences for not doing it, like They had to have like 3 practices a day when I guess they usually just have 2. And he even threatened having 4. And they did show in the movie that they were practicing in the dark. So anyway, then he tried a new strategy, and he had them run through the woods, and they ended up
At 3 in the morning.
at 3 in the morning? Oh, 3 in the morning at Gettysburg Graveyard. And he had a little talk with them. And basically, it showed the players how destructive hate is. That these soldiers, in the ground, in the grave, were all buried there because of hate. And he doesn't want us to hate, of course. God doesn't want us to hate each other. And he always wants to show us a better way. And he does that by keeping his arms outstretched toward us, teaching us through, like I said before, through scripture, through prayer. But we have to come to that quiet place. We have to come to that still place, that hallowed ground, and meet him there, and then learn how to do that.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful moment in the movie because, like you said, they're having all these practices every day. Sometimes they're getting in fights. There's a lot of chaos. Even them waking up at like 3 in the morning, running through the woods, I think probably for miles because it's light out when they get there. They're tired. And then as soon as they step on the grounds, it's quiet and calm and it's serious.
So God never gives up on us. He never gives up on us, just like the coach didn't give up on them, and just say, oh, forget it, they're never going to change. God doesn't give up on us. He believes in our potential, like we said, and that we can change, or else why would Christ come, right?
Yeah, and he's going to require some stuff of us, like if
those players.
Just like the players, he says you're going to have to change the way you tackle, change the way you block, and obviously change the way they relate to each other. So if we want to live our best life and to do God's work, we have to come to him knowing that he's going to change us, for the better.
And it might hurt.
And it might hurt a lot, right? So, like you talked about, during camp, they do become unified. After that moment at Gettysburg, there's this really cool time where it is dark out. They're having their practice, and all of a sudden, the captain and his good friend Julian, they come together.
They weren't friends before that.
No, they weren't friends before that. They hated
enemies.
each other. He's like, you don't give a crap about me. And, I have a poor attitude because of you. You're my leader. And then after this moment at Gettysburg, after this calmness, then they have a practice. And Gary actually calls out his good friend, his good white friend, which Julian had accused him of not doing that before. Julius had accused him before of he doesn't do his job on the field, you don't care, but he called him out. So that probably said to Julius, okay, he's listening to me and he's wanting to improve all the players. And then they just have this moment of left side, strong side, left side, strong side. And that example of these two leaders on the team just spreads.
Yeah.
And that can be in life too, if we're
a big influence on each other. That's for sure.
For sure. So in camp, they do all this work to see each other as people and actually become really good friends. But when they get back, they say, now we're in the real world. We're not in camp anymore. Because like we mentioned earlier, they are desegregating the schools, or this school in particular. There's riots. There's protests, there's fighting, and they're like, this isn't camp anymore, how do we stay united like we did before? So, Mom, how can we remember Christ and continue to follow him when we're not at home or we're not at church?
Yeah, because it is hard. It's almost like you've been away at camp, you've been in an environment that invites the Spirit, and you're doing things that service for one another, and there's a great spirit about it. And then all of a sudden, you're out in the real world, and there's temptations everywhere, and it's a much different ball game. You're not in that little cozy corner where it's easy to do what's right.
Yeah, you don't have the coach right beside you. Like sometimes when we're in the temple, we feel him very much so present,
Yeah.
But in different situations, we don't always feel him there.
Yeah, so that's tough. So you really have to work on your spirituality, just like they had to work on being friends even when they weren't at camp. So comes back to the basics, just trying to stay close to Christ by keeping the commandments and, opening those scriptures up. Try to do it once a day and say your prayers and just like get real with God, like tell him what's really bugging you and he's going to help you stay strong. And what I really like to do is remember the times when I have seen God in my life, where he's reached out to me and answered my prayer. Things are going one way, and then all of a sudden God steps in and things change, like almost overnight. And those are some of my favorite, that's one of my favorite things to do to try to stay close to God, is to remember all the times where he's answered my prayers or blessed me, and I've seen his hand in my life.
Yeah, and you just said remember, right? You said remember a couple of times. That's mentioned a lot in the scriptures. God's always reminding us to remember when he was in our life helping us. And that's also the name of the movie, Remember the Titans, right? So the Titan name is obviously like very symbolic and really important to these players. And whether they have that Titan uniform on or not, or whether they're on the field or not, they're still Titans. They still identify as Titans.
And
to
we're
me,
always disciples of Christ.
Yeah.
Whether we're in church or whether we're, digging a ditch.
Yeah. So and to me, what being a Titan means in the movie is striving to be their best, working hard, being there for the other players. So when we're taking on the name of Christ, what does that mean?
That means being there for him and each other. It's like going the extra mile, giving your coat and your cloak and just putting forth as much effort as you can to build other people up and help out in any way. And that's how you serve God, right? Is by serving each other. So that to me is like taking on the name of Christ and being his disciple.
Once Gary, the captain, made that decision that he was a Titan, that he was all in, it was so easy when hard things came up. Like when his girlfriend was like, "What are you doing?" And he tries to introduce Julius to her and she doesn't shake his hand. Or the car comes up full of his friends are like, come party with us after the game, and he says, "No, I'm gonna stay here." So I think you talked about before, as soon as he made that decision.
Yeah, he was totally committed, and it's fun to think about him being totally committed to the Titans and then comparing that to ourselves, that we're totally committed to Jesus. And what do we do when we're totally committed? That's a question we can all ask ourselves.
Yeah, that's really good. So the Titans end up winning all their games in the season. I think it's because of their unity and because of all their hard work. They definitely were all humbled, like we talked about at certain times. I don't know if we talked about it in this.
No, but there had to be an element of humility. I mean, the pride kept them apart. But as soon as they saw that they saw the good in each other, and I think they could see themselves in the other person. And when they could see themselves in the other person, then they could accept them and be humble to work together.
Yeah, so I mean, the town is just going crazy. I think the town and community, they're all united because of this team. you know?
Everybody likes a winning team.
Everybody likes a winning team, right? And it brought everybody together. Then right before the championship game, Gary gets in a car accident and is paralyzed from the waist down, which is obviously devastating. You know, I cry every time I watch the scene in the hospital when he's lying there and Julius comes into him. He calls him his brother, you know.
You can see that he's had a total change of heart, and they are just like brothers. Like they were so close that nothing could come between them. And I know whatever Julius said was profound, but I can't remember what it was.
So Gary, obviously he can't play in the game anymore. He's the captain of the team. He's paralyzed. He can't play anymore. Do you think if they weren't a strong team, would they end up winning without their captain?
Yeah, that must have been devastating for them to have him not there and be in the hospital. But it probably also gave them strength, the strength to win for him. But yeah, there's no way they could have won if they weren't united, especially losing their captain like that. And he was such a great captain. I mean, he led those boys like no other. So yeah, if they hadn't been under his leadership and been united and committed as he was, then yeah, no, there's no way they could have won that game.
Yeah, and I liked how you said that they were trying to win the game for him because he's still a part of the team.
Yeah.
Even though he's not on the field, he's still a part of the team. Even if we're not always out there front and center, we're on the sidelines, we're still a part of the team, and we're still cheering and trying to inspire and build people up.
We can be happy for each other. You know, like you'd think Gary laying in that bed and thinking I could be out there helping them win the game and really feeling sorry for himself. But at the very end, when they won the game, he's in his bed with his arms up in victory, you know, and just so happy for his team, not grieving his, you know, that he couldn't be in it, part of it that way.
The very end of the movie is he did end up dying by a car crash, I think 10 years later, and the whole team comes back again together for him in a beautiful moment. I think probably as a reminder, right? Like a reminder of this team of the Titans. Even though it was like a sad moment to bring them together, maybe it reminded them of the great things they were able to do because they came together and looked past hate and, you know, found love instead.
Yeah. There's so many other different themes you could find in this movie as well. I'm sure you're thinking, if you go ahead and watch it, you know, because we urge you to, that's for sure, that you'll be able to find your own themes in there. Not just, you know, unity and hard work and, you know, that God is always willing to help us. There's lots of other ones as well.
There's tons and tons, and that's what you get from like a really good movie. And that's why I love doing this, because it just gets you excited and you can compare it to life and see how those characters overcame and help inspire you. I love movies like this that are based on true stories. They're just really inspiring. So, Mom, how has watching this movie and discussed God in this movie helped you see God in different ways in your life? Has it given you a different perspective or a reminder?
Yeah. Yeah, that God wants us to be one with each other. He wants us to see each other as He sees us, and that we're all brothers and sisters. And we're here to learn to love each other and to make sacrifices. And I think that anything that good comes in your life takes effort and sacrifice. And so this is a good reminder. This movie is a really good reminder of that.
I think it's a good reminder for me to come to God being willing to change, to be able to do what He wants me to do. Because I know He sees my whole life and he sees my potential. So that's a good reminder. And just to try to remember him throughout the day so that I can be a little kinder to others. So thanks for listening. And like my mom said, go watch Remember the Titans if you haven't. It's a great movie. And comment below the things you learned. And see if you can find God in new ways in your life.